Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special draft edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. Rounds 2 and 3 are now complete, and we have a full picture of what the Steelers were going after. Well, at least some of us did. If we were mind readers, we probably didn't expect maybe the 2 picks that were made today. And we probably had one that was not made in Andrew Billings, the defensive tackle from Baylor, that wow. I mean, I was high on him as maybe even the first round pick, and apparently many of the other people that were in my panel and, football experts everywhere, heck, Ike Taylor in the NFL Network mock draft that has been airing actually picked Billings as well as his first pick overall, and it's kind of puzzling. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him, and some people were joking on Twitter as to whether or not he had a gas mask and a bong, and if that ended up on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever, and maybe that's why Billings fell. But apparently, hearing possibly a knee injury, I thought maybe a flyer with a third-round pick, but Pittsburgh Steelers come away with another excellent, solid choice there as well. But let's go to our second-round choice, of which caused me to get in a little bit of a verbal tussle with my cousin, being as we are Ohio State Buckeyes fans. However you guys might feel about that, no ill will towards the Penn States, Pitts, or West Virginias of the world. All great teams. You could love college football and love multiple teams. Don't have a problem with that. But with the Ohio State Buckeyes and apparently the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Mike Tomlin love for getting players out of Columbus, Ohio over the last several years, we thought sitting there at pick 58 there in the second round was Von Bell, safety, a need for the Steelers, of course. And the Pittsburgh Steelers come out and they do stay tried and true with their pro day visits and their pre-draft visits, and they go after Maryland's Sean Davis, who actually has better measurables, has played in more games, and started more games than Von Bell. Now, granted, maybe not on a national championship quality or caliber team or defense, but let me tell you something. When you have a guy that is producing the kind of numbers that he is like this, we've seen it happen before with players that come from, let's say, somewhere like Alabama, and you're thinking, wow, okay, is he a product of maybe that system or a beneficiary of all the other talent that's around him? And that's not to sell Von Bell down the river. If you heard my previous podcasts with the draft specials, I wanted Von Bell, but man, this Sean Davis pick kind of snuck up on me because, the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking at safety, and Sean Davis was a safety, but last year he played most of, if not all of his time as a cornerback. So I had already written off Sean Davis as one of the players that Kevin Colbert and company may be looking at because I had him classified as maybe the wrong position. We'll take a look at Sean Davis here, 6'1", 201, and he played all 4 years, 50 games he appeared in with 40 starts. And, of course, he started all of those games as a senior, ranked second in the nation with 5 forced fumbles, and that's the second most in Maryland's history. And he tied for a team best 3 interceptions. Now, another thing that's pretty interesting, I was saying, just comparing him with maybe some of the people want to compare him with Von Bell and the interfamily feud that I got in with my cousin, being the Buckeyes fan, just detaching the emotion from this and saying who's the better player just by measurables. And we don't know this. This is just so hypothetical at this point. But Sean Davis, and we're looking at what's going on here with Keith Butler, Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin and company, and what they're doing with this defense. This defense overnight has become incredibly scary, hard-hitting, fast, and intimidating. We already had players that were pretty fast in their own right. I mean, you've got Jarvis Jones, okay. Bud Dupree, of course. James Harrison still blowing up people. You got Tuitt and Hayward, who are the bookends there. But then Ryan Shazier, what a player he is. And then we finally saw what what the Steelers had seen in Mike Mitchell when they signed him 2 years ago. We saw that last season, apparently, being healthy and being that player that the Steelers reached out for and actually gave a fairly healthy contract to in free agency. So now we're going to see him potentially paired up with who I feel can be a day one starter in Sean Davis, because it's not often. I mean, how many college players, you see these guys that come out early, and Sean Davis stays, he's a senior, he's not coming out early, he has 40 starts. I mean, that he had more starts than Von Bell by eight more starts, or at least 8 more games, or 12 more games and 8 starts. I mean, that's a lot of experience to where this kid might be ahead of the curve, and he's going to be competing for that starting position from day one. I think he could be the day one starter. And you look at how flexible that Sean Davis is going to be. You look at the way that Keith Butler used some of these safeties last year, even with an extra safety on the field, as was the case with Robert Golden. So we could see that Sean, we're looking at athletes. You're looking at Artie Burns, the pick from last night in round 1, who is a 2-sport star as a track athlete. And Sean Davis posted a combine best, 4.46, not overall combine best, I don't think, among the top performers, though, as a defensive back, that is a best. 21 reps on the bench. He's fast. He has a higher vertical leap than Von Bell does. Better broad jump, just all the way around, just more agile of a player. And when you compare that, when I think of last year, and I think of some of the holes, and even going back to 2 years ago when Troy Polamalu was last year, and I'm thinking about all that help over the top and the safeties getting beaten, and Will Allen being in his mid-30s, and Will Allen got 4 sacks in his system last year. What are you going to do when you put one of the fastest players coming out of college, who is a surefire tackler, no less? Let me go over. Sean Davis had over 100 tackles in his sophomore and junior years. So that was a combined 100 tackles before he had 88 in his senior year. This is his senior year. 88 total tackles. Holy cow. 4.5 of those for a loss, a sack, 3 interceptions, 3 passes defended, and 5 forced fumbles. I mean, it takes some guys, like, that's a career's worth of statistics. So Sean Davis, this is a player that I'm very excited for, very excited to have. And just by looking at the way that the rest of the maybe corner picks went today, maybe the Steelers were right on Artie Burns too. And now I'm feeling that the rest of the NFL knows something about Andrew Billings, and no one has taken a shot on him yet. I really have very, very little regret over the players that we have so far. So we get to round 3, and Billings is still there, and I'm thinking, man, this could be Billings. But talking with some of the different people as I am chatterboxing during this event, and it comes up to the name Javon Hargrave comes up, who is formerly, as you know, as the 1AA for some of us who recall before it became the Football Championship Series, or FCS. Your kind of second tier of Division I, which I'm very familiar with from my hometown of Youngstown, Ohio, and Youngstown State. For those of you who know who Jim Tressel is as an Ohio State coach, that's where he came from and won many national championships. I want to say 4 national titles, and appeared in 6 national championship games as his time there. That's the same type of level that Carson Wentz with North Dakota State has also come out of. So you do get some standout players and talent from this type of level. One of the most famous of all time I remember watching, of course, was, and now his name just escaped me, of course, doing these things late at night after consuming 4 hours plus of football. So out of Elkhorn State, Steve McNair, of course, who was now deceased, but one of the a very great NFL career, one of the 1AA, now FCS players who stood out and was in the Heisman talk. So there are players who make that leap from that level. You don't necessarily need a player who's been playing with an Ohio State or like an Alabama or something of that nature. These players could be special talents. I mean, you look at Jerry Rice coming from a small school, even Antonio Brown still within the Division I realm, but a 6th-round pick from Central Michigan. So could Javon Hargrave be the next guy to make a huge impact, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, which is where he's going to be at 6'1", 309 defensive tackle out of South Carolina State? This guy was a 2-time 2014-2015 Associated Press All-American, and the numbers he put up are phenomenal for a nose tackle or defensive tackle or any type of defensive lineman at any level of football. 59 total tackles and 43 solo, registering 13.5 sacks and 22 tackles for a loss in those 2 years. He would force 2 fumbles and have 11 quarterback pressures in 2015 alone. He started his career just as strong as a freshman All-American, where he had 45 tackles then as well, 4.5 for a loss, and as a sophomore had another 12.5 tackles for a loss and 5.5 sacks. In his junior year, he was, not only his junior and senior year, 2014 and 2015, as conference in the FCS, the MEAC Defensive Player of the Year in his conference 2 years in a row, back-to-back, 23.5 tackles for a loss. And he has an FCS, he's tied for an FCS single-game record with 6 sacks, which was on his way to 16 total for the season. 16 total sacks from a nose tackle. Wow. This was a guy, when I was doing my research, and of course, if you saw it out on Twitter or Facebook, I tweeted out and posted page 20 as I'm reading this out of my own notes from the 2016 draft preview. No surprise, as this was a pre-draft visitor just as much as Sean Davis was, and so was Von Bell. So these guys were on the radar, and you had an opportunity to see some of this. And just doing my homework leading into the draft myself, I said, small school, but man, if this is a guy that we could get in a 3rd or a 4th round, this might be a very nice pickup. And we heard Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin speak at the press conference on Monday, the pre-draft press conference, and that was the one I still, every time I think of a quote out of that press conference, I'm thinking about, if you have the red barn and you have red paint, you paint the barn with the red paint, or whatever the silly quote was. He sounded like a politician. They were just so cryptic. And they talked about a nose tackle, and they talked about how the Steelers are usually, they're not playing with even their base 3-4 defense most of the time. So you have at least maybe 3rd down where this nose tackle comes off the field. So how much value are you putting in that position? So now that you have Big Dan McCullers there, and Javon Hargrave maybe figures to work into this rotation as well, this is probably a very good spot for a player like this who doesn't need to be dependent on to maybe make those stops all the time on 3rd down. He may come off the field for a spell, and it's not a very high risk, very low usage type pick that Andrew Billings may have been, and now he may even be an injury risk. So very much so when looking at the large picture, even going back on the words that I said, because, hey, I could be wrong and I can change my mind, guys. And it is my show, so I'm going to change my mind. But I'm happy with Javon Hargrave, particularly round 3. Now, round 1 pick, nah, there are things that are known as a reach, and I'm not going to say that anybody necessarily was Okay, I am going to say there was a reach, but it was not the Pittsburgh Steelers tonight. Did anyone else see? And I love this. I come from a soccer background too, and love it or hate it, the kickers. Kickers are people too. Holy cow. I thought this type of stuff only happened when I got into a fantasy draft with somebody who had never even done this before, or a fantasy draft where we're not doing it for money, so nobody just, they get their little kicks and giggles there, and they're going to take a kicker. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers go out of the second round and then draft back up to get a kicker. Holy cow. I don't know, man. You just never know. I saw a guy at the Steelers-Colts game sitting right next to us last year there in Heinz Field wearing an Adam Vinatieri jersey, and that dude is what, like 42, 43 years old or something like that now? 41? I got to look it up at some point, but he's up there and he's still going strong. So God bless the Buccaneers if they have a kicker that's anywhere near the Hall of Fame type of level career of an Adam Vinatieri and can do it for, I don't know how old this kid is that they drafted that's a kicker, but if he can do it for 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, 18 years, whatever, geez, okay. Maybe he'll validate being a second-round draft choice. Holy cow, though. I don't think the other 31 teams, they were probably like, huh? Okay, thank you. That means maybe our player drops to us. Like I said, I was happy with that. I got a little nervous there that maybe, one of these teams drafting and moving up was going to take someone the Steelers were looking at. And really my only oh no moment of the night was the Detroit Tigers, thinking baseball now, the Detroit Lions taking Ashawn Robinson from Alabama, who was somebody that I liked in the same vein of Andrew Billings. And it was definitely somebody else that the Steelers had in for a pre-draft visit. It makes complete sense there. They had traded for Haloti Ngata after losing Ndamukong Suh to the Miami Dolphins in free agency the year before. So Robinson off the board, and that was about the only pick where I really went, Now there's some other stuff that's happening with some of these quarterbacks that are going in round 3, and things are getting real interesting. And then we get up to the Steelers pick, and they were too busy worrying about fixing, for those of you on the NFL Network end of the feed rather than the ESPN feed where I had to switch over, they were more worried on NFL Network about hooking up Braxton Miller's microphone because of this big, shocking, hey, he went in the third round to the Houston Texans. And, hey, you know what? That kid's got talent. Like I said, I'm a Buckeyes guy too, so definitely had my eyes on Braxton Miller. But Sean Davis, Javon Hargrave, Javon Hargrave is just a monster player that has a tremendous upside. Sean Davis, I believe, can be a day one starter. And then Artie Burns, many corners aren't day one starters in the NFL or even year one contributors. He has some time and flexibility to sit behind maybe a Ross Cockrell, as long as Ross Cockrell doesn't fall on his face and contributes decently as he did last season. He's under a 1-year contract. You also have Senquez Golson, who is very fast. It is just the theme of this defense. William Gay, a guy, the only corner, according to Pro Football Focus, who didn't give up a touchdown. Well, I should say starting corner, because you got some guys that, they just don't get enough snaps. So anybody worth their salt that played cornerback in the NFL last year, William Gay, the only guy, believe it or not, in that 30th ranked pass defense. He's the only guy in the NFL that doesn't give up a touchdown all year long. You have Mike Mitchell back there too. I am loving that. Sorry if that wind hit you in the earphones there, but very, very excited for the future of this football club. It's going to be interesting to see what the Steelers target tomorrow. It's really no man's land. I do believe they have about 96 or 97 picks between their 4th rounder and then back into the 6th round where they got a compensatory pick and they're around the bottom of the 6th. And then they pick up a few picks right there between 6 and 7 right away. They have 3 picks, 2 in the 7th round. So with the 4th round and keeping in mind what might be available that they're still interested in, I still believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be targeting their secondary with yet another pick. It is possible that they look at a wide receiver. They could look for some offensive line or defensive line depth. You never know, man. This Billings guy could end up falling even further. I don't know if the Steelers have an immediate need for somebody who can't can't play all the different techniques along the defensive line, so I'm just going to I'm going to let that ship sail. But I do think that some of these other safeties, they just looked at so many safeties, so many corners, defensive backs, and guys that were versatile before the draft. I think there was something like 15, 16, over half of their pre-draft visits were all in the secondary. So the kid from Duke's still out there, Jeremy Cash. I believe Justin Simmons is still out there. So quite a few guys that could play depth, because I don't think Shamarko Thomas is the guy. And that's the thing, I'm having this conversation with my cousin, and he's saying, oh, no, Sean Davis, he just loves Von Bell and his Buckeyes so much. Sean Davis is the next Shamarko Thomas. Now, come on, Shamarko Thomas can't even play special teams without getting a flag. Another ship that's sailing. I do think the Steelers will look. Potentially, they do have him for another year. They could also break the glass in case of emergency and maybe sign Will Allen to maybe another one of these kind of veteran thank you type deals where hey, here's a 2-year deal, but the second year is not worth that much and you're probably going to get released, kind of like the Brett Kiesel type thing. So it's going to be interesting with Shamarko Thomas. It's going to be interesting with the remainder of this draft. The Steelers have 4 more picks, a 4th rounder, a 6th rounder, that's a compensatory pick, a 7th rounder, and then a 7th rounder that they acquired via trade with the New York Giants for punter Brad Wing. So I do think the Steelers might be in the ballpark for at least one more defensive back, if not 2. I would like to grab another safety, have some depth, some peace of mind, because again, even if this guy isn't a starter or a major contributor during on your defensive snaps, there is a third phase of football that's special teams, and you still need players that are capable and very headstrong and can play special teams. And that's one more thing I want to cover before I end here tonight. The Pittsburgh Steelers have really, really made it a point to pick some players in their draft so far over these 2 days that are some really good character guys, and they seem to be guys who don't have any type of health concerns. So that's something they're looking past Billings. Okay, if there is something, and there has to be something, all of these NFL teams are passing on him right now. They have to know something, okay? And if there is something to this guy, and he does have an injury risk, the Steelers are really going past the character thing. I think they kind of feel burned by Martavis Bryant, and no pun intended there, but they've got Artie Burns, who lost his mother, still ends up playing. You have this other kid now, Sean Davis, who apparently speaks 3 languages in addition to English. He speaks French and Chinese. So instead of maybe taking a flyer on a guy who could end up on a suspension from drugs, or could end up just being a mental case, or maybe they're going after smart, intelligent, and very athletic players who will be able to not only understand Keith Butler's defensive scheme, but they're going to be in it, and they're going to be fast, and they're going to hit hard. And if you've never seen any type of sure tackler, just take a look at some of this film on Sean Davis. It's very exciting. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Day 3 of the draft tomorrow. You might want to check me out on Facebook and Twitter throughout the day. I will be on hand at the Pittsburgh Steelers Fan Blitz, which this is almost like an advertisement for it, but it's going on from noon to 6 tomorrow. So I'm going to be down in the Berg hanging out. Come take a look for me. I'll be wearing a Steel City Underground shirt. You may or may not see it. Depends if it's going to be cold or rainy. I'm going to be down there with all my Steelers gear. I may even put up a few live streams. I'm going to be tweeting, taking photos, posting on Facebook. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you happen to see me and want to bump into me and BS about the Steelers, by all means, just say, "Hey, Joe, how's it going?" And we're going to have some fun with that. I will be in touch with everyone later. We'll have a special draft wrap-up show probably up on our website either tomorrow night or early Sunday. So if you like the show, by all means, what I wanted to say was please share it with some of your friends, share it with other people, let them know that I'm out there. Like I said, some of you really helped me out a lot by getting on the iTunes new and noteworthy right out the gate. I truly appreciate it. Head on over to iTunes and rate the show. Head on over to YouTube. You can subscribe on both of those services. Leave me some comments and feedback. I absolutely appreciate it. What do you like? What don't you like? And what can I do better? Until then, folks, you have yourself some fun. Enjoy the remainder of the 2016 NFL Draft. Be safe, be good.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.